Okay, so our next image here is Cassandra's, and first we're going to look at the light here, and we can see this in the original image. And actually, this is the edited image, the original image. So the light's coming from in front of the subject. We can see it's probably a window that's allowing the light to come in and illuminate her. And it illuminates her in a nice way, but I think this was the subject that came up for us last week too, is that I think you can bring your subject probably closer to the window and play with the lighting some in order to get more dimension added to her face. So it's not just coming right straight across her face. So how would you alter this? You could do that by bringing in objects to take out light, right? So something that's going to absorb light, or something that's going to filter light through, or something that's going to block light completely. If you had that far enough away, that would start to create more dimension as the light moves around it. Just by having your grandmother move her face in different ways will have that light fall on her differently. And then making sure that you have a single light source, and then maybe a reflector instead of more than one area that might have light coming in. That will allow the light to have more dimension also, because the light here is coming in and it's fully illuminating her, but adding more dimension and adding more direction to the lighting, I think would be helpful. The composition is similar to what we've seen in a lot of these images this week. It's more of a headshot. I think people were more focused on the post-processing work and less focused on the composition. So this composition is pretty straightforward. I would move your subject further away from the wall so we're not seeing the siding, the stucco on the wall. The editing, you've removed some blemishes. You mentioned that, and you warmed up her skin quite a bit. Maybe a little bit too much. I might pull back a little bit on that. But the removal of the blemishes, I think, works fine here. It's not an edit that's overly editing her skin and trying to make her look younger, or take away some of this character on her face. We're still able to see this. You just removed a few things that might have been bothering her. So I think that was a nice, subtle way to make the adjustments. It doesn't change what's being communicated in the images between the two by those edits. The warmth of her skin, I think, might change it slightly. But overall, it's pretty similar to the original. You've just made these minor edits. So you keep the same intent with the image, which just seems like more of a headshot for your mom. I see this as in similar way to this image, which is similar to this image, is just pretty straightforward headshots of people, like what you would see in a magazine, like next to an article. This is the person that wrote the article, like really straightforward images. All right, and then do I have the first image? Let's just make sure I'm doing this right. That your first image is the edited image, and yeah, I think so. Okay, so in your first image, you have this hard light coming across your subject, really illuminating her face, and then falling off. And this is creating much more dimension, right? Much more shape to her face, and that's working really well here for this image. The composition is really straightforward, as we've had in a lot of these images, but you have a background that was intentionally used, and it's adding to the subject opposed to taking away. Like, you want that to be in focus to a certain degree so we can see the detail there. It's part of the overall ambiance of the image. So you're taking a pretty straightforward image, but you're also allowing us to have a little bit of a plain background that also adds to the meaning of the image. So you said you took out a little bit of, let's see, you brighten the image using Lightroom so we can see that, that image is a little bit dark. This is a little brighter. I actually think the drama of the contrast works well in this image. I don't know if you need to change the levels quite as much as you did. And then you touched up some blemishes just on the forehead, but that looks very natural. And you changed some color shifts in her hair, it looks like, or that's what you said. So that's looking good as well. My main comment on the editing would be the skin adjustment, that looks really natural. It doesn't look overly done. We still have texture on our skin. So the meaning of the image still comes through. What are you trying to communicate with this image? It seems like it's pretty much like the straight headshot that we've seen with the other images, but the warmth of the light, the direction of the light feels like we're on vacation somewhere. And it's like sitting in the sun opposed to in feeling the warmth of the sun. Like that feeling comes across in this image opposed to just having a softer light across here. So I think you do start to communicate more with that type of lighting. And then this is the last image that we're looking at. This is by ZinZin. And you had a friend visiting. Actually, this is your original, right? This is the original. And you took a headshot of her. You just adjusted some acne on her face. But it looks like you actually did a lot more than that. So you smoothed the skin, but you've also kind of flattened out a lot of the image. So here there's really hard light, and you flattened out that light in your adjustments, and you've taken away some of the dark points on the left side of the image in that adjustment. Her skin tone starts to get a little bit washed out here. So I would say the editing, sorry, because these are in the opposite order, it's just confusing me. So let's switch them so I stop doing that. There we go. So the meaning, this feels very natural, and this feels like there's kind of a film over it, like we don't know exactly what's going on. The smoothing of the skin, I think, works. It doesn't feel that artificial except for on her nose there, where that line comes across. But then overall, there's a lightening of the image. The light that you have here is harder, on the harder side of soft light, right? So it's stronger soft light, but it still has that soft quality. And just moving her head slightly so that her eyes are looking towards the window, like towards the corner of the window, over here somewhere, would allow us to fill in some of these shadow areas and allow us to get some light in her eyes opposed to here where they're really dark. So I think the lighting that you're using is fine, but I would move the way that she's facing to really capture that lighting. The composition is pretty straightforward here, and like we've talked about, some of these images, the background can be pretty simple, but it's still adding to the subject, and we saw that with Bridget's image here, where the background is really simple. It's not including a lot, but it's still adding a lot to the image. And even you see it in Lauren's image, where the background it's just pink, but it's very meaningful to the content and the concept of the image. So here it's a pretty plain background and it's not adding anything. So figuring out what you want to communicate with this image and including that as part of the background will be essential to having a really memorable image where we're not just looking at a portrait of someone, but we're looking at a portrait of someone that has, and the portrait has meaning, which just allows us to connect to it more, thus being more memorable.